Good evening, YouTube friends and family. How are you? It is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Astroscoop Livestream, Astroscoop Astrology Livestream. Once again, the weekly live streams are every Friday or Saturday at 7 p.m. Right now, I've been doing them on Fridays, which is right now 7 p.m. New York Eastern Standard Time. So welcome. How is everyone doing? Happy summer solstice. So today is the 28th of June, and now we're a full week, or a little more than a week actually, into the full summer energy. And I always look to the west here. And now it's at 7 p.m. The sun is setting here approximately between 8:25 and 8:30. So we'll start losing a little bit of light soon. But right now it's still peak. So for the last 5 or 6 days, the light is peaked here in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's the maximum amount of light. So that's pretty awesome. So I always feel like at this time of year, this is a real gift, like to really appreciate this next week or two of the summer, because once the summer, as everyone knows, once the summer kicks into gear, it goes really fast. And then all of a sudden it's fall, and some people lament that summer goes so fast. But I think summer is perfect here. I'm like, when summer's done, I'm done. I'm done with the weather and the vibe and everything. So the change of the seasons is a beautiful thing. But as I look over here, it's really, really beautiful. It's cooler, which is nice. Not as hot, not humid yet. So I'm sure that's coming soon. So it looks like right now we just have Carolyn. I'm going to give it a minute or two before we get into it, just to see if anyone else comes a little late. So I wanted to mention that on my channel, the United States viewers are continuing to contribute to more than 50% of my views in the last 1, 2, 3, probably almost month now. So it's so interesting to me that I had all those other countries where I was getting the majority of views, and that makes me wonder about certain signs or my approach on some of the videos or live streams. And I wonder, when we were in Gemini, if there were just simply more curiosity about Gemini, or more Gemini people or placements watching those videos with those themes. And now we're in Cancer, and it's more United States based, which is quite interesting to me. So probably never figure that out. But I know that all sorts of YouTubers like to look at their stats. And it's always an interesting thing to me how it changes from video to video and week to week. So right now I'm just over 700 subscribers. I'd love to get to 1,000 by the end of 2024 with your help. So please, anyone that sees this, please share with your family and friends. If you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe somewhere, or go into the bell, and you can subscribe personalized or all. So you can get all the notifications from my videos, or it will personalize depending on what videos you watch on my channel. So please don't forget to do that. Still, about 80% of you are not subscribed. So I really, really need you to subscribe. It's super easy and it's free. And don't forget to like the videos or live stream, comment, and share, because all of that action, the engagement, helps the algorithm, and it helps all this good stuff to move forward. And that's what we need to do. We need to move forward. All right. So we're about 4 minutes in. I'll give it another 30 seconds or minute or so, see if anyone else pops in. I know sometimes people are anonymous, and that's good. I think for the most part, if I was watching a podcast or live stream, I don't mind if my name is shown, but initially I would be anonymous, probably at least in the beginning. So I get that feeling. So all right. So last week, so we've been in the sign of Cancer now for about 8 days or so, 7 or 8. It's like 7 full days. So the sign of Cancer coincides with the summer solstice, obviously, at least here in the zodiac system. And the Cancer energy goes with nature's energy. So anyone that has had or has a Cancer family member or grew up with someone, you'll know that that Cancer person, most likely, especially female Cancers, probably had a natural affinity for animals, creatures, sea life, the beach, pools, anything like that. Now, I know that's kind of spot on for water signs because water is water. But Cancer in particular, when you think about this time of year, as opposed to Pisces, which is the winter, and Scorpio, which is the fall. So those are totally different types of energies and vibrations if you think about how we move through the year. So the summer, I think I mentioned this last week, I think the summertime is peak time for the Gemini Cancer cusp and going into Cancer, and then the Cancer Leo cusp, and Leo's coming up. It's a very, very huge focal point on the axis of the zodiac signs. You have the Cancer and Capricorn axis, and we are exactly halfway through the year, halfway through 2024. So I think that makes the Cancer time, the Cancer Moonchild season, very pivotal and important when it comes to astrology. And that leads me into the Cancer 2 Decan. So Cancer, oh, I got a phone call. So I mentioned last week that the first week of Cancer, coming off the late cusp there, goes from Gemini Cancer cusp into Cancer 1, which is an empathic, very moony or moody Cancer person. So this week with Cancer 2, obviously all Cancers are ruled by the moon, but you have the flavor of Pluto. So you have the co-ruler, which is Pluto. And of course, the main mode here is feeling or feelings. Now, when I was researching celebrities, which we'll get to later, it was very apparent to me immediately, and I can't remember if I did this last year for Cancer. I know I covered a couple people. I might have mentioned 3 or 4 that are on this list, but I know I didn't do a fleshed out version of celebrities for Cancer last year. So when I was looking up the celebrities, it was really apparent to me how moony and Cancerian these people are physically, their face, but also how quirky, sensitive, but quirky and zany that these Cancer people are. Unconventional, unique, much more than the other Cancer periods, more than the Cancer 1 and more than Cancer 3 or the cusp, which we'll talk about next week. So people born this week, June 25th to July 2nd, which we're still in, is Cancer 1. We're still in the early raw Cancer energy. So now we're going to be going into July 3rd to the 10th or 11th, and that's going to comprise Cancer 2. So hugely different with the Pluto sub-ruler. And earlier today, I watched a female astrologer, and she talked about the recent Cancer Capricorn full moon. I forget her name. I forgot to subscribe. See, I watched her video and I didn't subscribe, but I will find her, and maybe I'll shout her out. And she's a very small channel, but she's young, and she did a really wonderful analysis of the Capricorn full moon that we just had. Cancer, Sun in Cancer, Moon in Capricorn, which is the Cancer Capricorn axis, the opposition. So she talks about that for 40 minutes, and very, very well. And I totally vibrated with it. So I'll have to look that up and shout her out maybe next week. But she was mentioning how this point, like right now, like I said with the weather, July 1st is on Monday. It's the peak of the year. It's exactly 6 months. You slice the year in half, and it's a culmination of peak energy in astrology. So we started with spring. We start with Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then we start summer, and it's Cancer, which is a cardinal sign. And the cardinal signs coincide with the solstice or equinox. So cardinal signs are very, very powerful in that very unique way. And look at all the civilizations that respected the the marching, if you will, of those cardinal signs, and how they marked the seasons and looked to the sky for answers. But Cancers born coming up this week are domestic, yet uniquely zany. So if you can think of anyone you know that's born between July 3rd and the 10th or 11th, you're having moon-ruled people that are similarly sensitive to Cancer ones, but has the spice and addition of Pluto. And so, yes, and that's true, it takes on a Scorpio undertone, Scorpio influence. And Cancers born that week can be very funny. All Cancers can have a knack for comedy and humor, even if it's in the wake of sadness or melancholy. They can make fun of themselves or make fun of you. Cancer is very good for comedy and obviously for acting as well. But Cancers born this week are uniquely zany. I don't know how to describe it. They just are. And they are moony. They're moody, but I feel like they have an intensity about them, and sometimes a comedic intensity that helps them get through things in life and helps them have grit and get through things possibly in an easier way than Cancer ones, than the previous early Cancer. That's all moon energy. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to be a sun in Cancer or even a moon in Cancer, a Cancer rising individual. If any of you have any of those placements, please comment. If you see this live stream in the future, please comment and let me know what it's like having an ultra sensitive moon sign on the angles on one of your big three. That must be so difficult. And I know a lot of people. I've known a lot of Cancer rising people. I've probably known more Cancer rising people than I have Cancer suns. And the Cancer rising people are very similar to the Cancer suns, but of course they are different signs. So there's a blend there. But the Cancer risings that I've known look very, very, very moony, crescent-like. But they are uniquely zany, and they will use their imagination into fantasy, strong fantasy life, and they're sagacious. That's the thesaurus word for the night, sagacious, and they are wise. So again, this brings me back to when you think about the Cancer-Capricorn axis, the opposites in astrology, you always have to consider the opposites. That's why I loved listening to this young astrologer today talking about like all the stuff that I always talk about astrologers miss, but she was like right on it. And astrologers often don't talk about, even brilliant astrologers on YouTube don't talk enough about the opposites, the polarities, and some of the more subtle things in astrology that really, really make learning astrology fascinating. And when you get stuck in astrology, if you get stuck when you're reading charts or doing readings or whatever, you have to look to other signs and other energies and planets to get answers about what you're currently trying to figure out. You have to think out of the box and you have to think elsewhere. So if you're trying to figure out Cancer, you have to think about Capricorn. If you were trying to figure out Capricorn, you got to think about Cancer. So it's always a good it's always a good approach. But Cancers born this week are definitely sagacious and wise, and they have a strong fantasy life, which can work positively or negatively for them. Now, Cancers born this week still are just as private. They value their privacy just as much as an early Cancer, but they're probably a tad more secretive, I would guess, because of the Pluto decanate. Just because Pluto is pronounced or there's Scorpio in the chart, it doesn't automatically make someone more secretive than the average person. We all have secrets and we all have things that we keep private, as we should. But a Cancer person that's private with the Pluto influence may be even more on the defense about people knowing what they're thinking or feeling, especially what they're feeling. So again, you might have this witty, kind of sweet, gentle facade for a Cancer born this week, but underneath they're much more intense, and they may not want to express the more intense or zany side that might be saved for a very select few people that they trust and that really know them and accept that. So the Pluto decan here is dark interests that really know them and accept that. So the Pluto decan here is dark interests. So anywhere Pluto touches, whether it's in a decan, if you have Pluto aspects in your chart, you have Scorpio planets, there is going to be a tendency, doesn't matter how innocent or pure someone grew up, there will be a tendency or maybe a fascination with dark interests or subjects, which could be crime. I know there's this huge wave now of crime podcasts, and what is it called? It's just like talks about crime and all these documentaries and everything. And I know the serial killer documentaries, they've been around for decades, but it's like in the last 5 years or so, it seems very pronounced with all the interest in crime. And I would say that someone born in this decan would have interests that could leanings, which would be dark. And that could just mean liking moody music or ambient music or dark classical music or goth music, and loving Halloween and being an actor and dressing in, doing dramatic plays. It could mean something like that. It doesn't mean they're necessarily dark in their values or their personal life, but there will absolutely be an unusual interest there. It's interesting, when I was researching this decan and I was looking at the stars and the celebrities and putting it together, it almost reminded me of, like, I was thinking, well, is there an Aquarius influence here? Because these seem like quirky Cancers. And there really isn't an obvious Aquarius influence. Obviously, every chart is going to have Aquarius somewhere in their chart, and that's where you're going to express unique qualities. We all have that, no matter what sign we are. But here we're just dealing with the moon and Pluto. And one astrology column I read, she talked about the fixed stars. This other woman talked about fixed stars because it's close to the constellation of Gemini, which I talked about last week and maybe 2 weeks ago. That possibly Mercury, she includes Mercury as a co-ruler for this decanate. And she coined it as July 1 to 10 instead of 3 to 10. So I'm not sure where she was getting. That was like Chaldean, maybe a Chaldean system, something similar there. Like I said, it's always usually within 2 or 3 days of how we break it down, depending on what astrologers are, what we're following. So there's a little wiggle room there. And I know that incredibly precise people or precise astrologers don't like that. But that is kind of I think it's just the reality of it, that it is not exactly perfect, no matter what system you're using. It could be close to it, but it's not perfect. But that is definitely the Pluto. I don't see necessarily any Aquarius. But this decan can be obsessive. We have to remember that Cancer people sometimes are feeding off their feelings. It doesn't matter if a Cancer person is quiet, retiring, or if they're loud and their emotions are at the forefront. Now, a lot of it will have to do with how they were brought up and their attachment style and love and stuff. But, the obsessive qualities of their feelings, they almost always get strong attachments to people, places, or things, or animals. And attachment is wonderful if it's healthy, but it can also be very unhealthy. And I think we've all been in relationships, anybody over probably 40 has been in at least one or two relationships where there was a unhealthy attachment, either with the person, or the person with you, or a friendship. And at some point, greetings, Karen. How are you? Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. I've been, we were talking about Cancer, and we're on the second decan here. But, it doesn't really matter, because that Cancer 2 person it's a real interesting mix of being quiet and reserved and secretive, and yet very chatty. I think I mentioned that Cancers are quiet, but they're not silent. Cancers can be chatterboxes. And especially Cancer rising people too. Cancer rising people, Mercury in Cancer, they could be chatterboxes. It's not in the same way of like a Gemini or a Sag, but they have a lot to express. Cancer people have a lot to express, and they have a lot of feelings to express, both positive, negative. It's like the good, the bad, and the ugly, like a Western. That's Cancer. So to get back to the attachment, to practice non-attachment is a huge lesson for all Cancer people, but especially Cancers born in this decade. Huge lesson for non-attachment. And that's what signs like Aquarius or Gemini, Libra, obviously the air signs, can teach Cancer. Again, attachment is necessary in life. It's normal. It's healthy. It shows that you care about something or someone, to have some, maybe even a little jealousy, or, you have to have a little of that. Otherwise, you don't care. And Cancer is all about the caring. But Cancer would be wise to practice non-attachment. And if I was coaching or reading for someone that had major Cancer, I would almost always suggest that. And of course, you have to look to their moon, because again, if their moon is in a different element, that throws a whole different monkey wrench into how they feel and how they express themselves. So the attachment to non-attachment. So out of all Cancer periods, this is probably the most important lesson for Cancer. And that's lessons for the water sign element, the three water signs. It's a huge lesson for all three water signs, is to practice non-attachment. All the elements, they have their gifts for a reason, and then they have their faults for a reason, right? So, that's why it's wonderful to do a whole chart of an event, a country, or a person, because you can think, well, gosh, my son, my daughter is a Cancer, or Cancer rising, or moon in Cancer, but there could be something else in the chart that's so strikingly different. Like, what if a Cancer was born on July 3rd and they had a stellium in Aquarius? To mention Aquarius again, they had 3 planets in Aquarius. So they were Sun in Cancer, but they had Moon in Aquarius, maybe Venus and Mars. Well, would that make them emotional? Well, they're still emotional. They're an emotional identity, but their moon, if their moon was in Aquarius, they would be one of the most unemotional signs in general. Their response to people would be more impersonal. So if they had all that Aquarius, that would strongly color all that Cancer feeling. They would still be a Cancer person, but then there would be other parts of themselves in that chart that would be Aquarian. So that would throw them off, or throw it off balance, so to speak. So the attachment and non-attachment, very, very good to learn that balance. So this group is quietly audacious. That's the way I look at it. They kind of like, Cancer takes chances. Cancer's aggressive, but again, in a quiet way. Cancers can get aggressive with people when they feel slighted or wounded. They can snap or pinch back. And the Cancer energy there's, you know, the sign of Scorpio, which we'll get to in the fall. I love talking about Scorpio. I mean, who wouldn't love talking about Scorpios? But the sign of Scorpio gets this rap as being vengeful for various reasons, which we'll talk about in the fall. Cancer is, I don't see Cancer as vengeful, but I see Cancer as, what's the word? It's almost like an eye for an eye. Cancer, the Cancer energy, when it's misused, can be very nasty. Now, if anybody that has Cancer in their chart, or you are Cancer, please take this with a grain of salt. I'm not saying Cancer people are nasty. I've known some very lovely Cancer people and Cancer moons rising. Wonderful qualities. All I'm saying is when a Cancer planet feels insecure, it's possibly, out of all the 12 signs, they're gonna act loony because it's the moon. You know, lunatic doesn't mean someone is an actual lunatic, but we look at the Latin of it, right? Luna. So Cancer, when Cancer feels slighted or wounded, Cancer will snap back, and Cancers can be nasty. I've seen hundreds of comments where people saying that. Now, again, it's unfair to say, you can't say that about every Cancer person. You can't say that about every Cancer rising person. It's often how they're treated. And, you know, again, it's also it's the level, how secure does the Cancer person feel? Security is huge. If they're secure with themselves, maybe they have a thicker skin and they don't see or feel as many slights from, or perceived slights from people. But they often, Cancer also has to take their part in the responsibility and accountability. Cancer, Capricorn, the axis. Capricorn, Saturn, Cancer's the moon. So the Cancer's this decadent. Another lesson is accountability. So if you're going to snap back at someone, if it's kind of like picking your battles, right? You pick your battles with your kids, you pick your battles with your friends or your loved one or your husband or wife. There are things to battle about, and there are other things that maybe you just got to have to slide. Just take a breath and say, you know what? We will revisit this. We'll put this on the table for now and get to this at another point, because that snap is not going to be productive. The positive of that, with Cancer being quietly audacious, is that Cancer can stand up for themselves. So Cancer should not be underestimated. There's no doubt to me that a lot of people that know astrology underestimate the strength of Cancer. They think Cancer is weak. So if you're a Cancer or Cancer rising, you could comment and you could tell people, right? You're not weak. No, you're tenacious. There's a grip there. You know, I said last week, it's a grip. Cancers are, crabs are tough. You know, they hang in there going back and forth on the sea, hard shell, and they have some endurance. You know, they hang in there. So Cancers are not weak. Cancers can be vulnerable once they do show their feelings, or if they wear their heart on their sleeve, they can be. And that's part of, like, it's hard for Cancer because they're quiet, but they also have this kind of zany side, but yet they value privacy. So there's some contradictions here with Cancer as a whole, but also with this decadent. So again, if you know anyone between the 3rd of July and the 10th or 11th, I don't know many people, but if you do, think of like this combination of quiet and moody, but also zany. It's like at the same time. And then if they have other signs in the chart like Sag or Gemini, they're going to be a hoot. They're going to be really cool. And I think planets in Gemini help Cancer people a lot. They really help to give more of a breeziness and a lighter quality to the chart when they're feeling so heavy and moody. So Gemini planets can really help Cancer charts. So values privacy. It's important for these folks to get out, literally get out of the house. So if a Cancer person is valuing their privacy and they're defensive and they're secretive and they only want a select few people to know what they're feeling, they are going to, inevitably, they will isolate themselves. And this is true of all the water signs Absolutely. All three water signs can have a tendency to isolate. And this isn't necessarily what I'm talking about, like psychology, like someone being an extrovert or an introvert. That's different. We all have levels of that depending on what environment we're in or who we're with. I'm just talking about water, the element of water. So, water's on the surface and it's calm and it has a sheen, but it's also super deep, right? You got the Bermuda Triangle, you got darkness, you got all thousands and thousands of weird sea creatures that haven't even been coined yet. So think about how amazing and how deep water is. So that's what I mean by they need to get out, because the water can literally wash over the Cancer person, and it can be very, very tough for them to bounce back from things, from hurts and things. They will eventually, because they have that tenacity. They will, in the long run, they will, but in the short term, it's hard for them. So they need to just literally get out and have some fun. That you don't always have to have a super serious time. You don't always have to have a profound time. It doesn't always have to be, even with the earth, it could be just like getting out and dancing, get near the water. Cancer people, you need to get near the water, especially now when you're having your solar return. You got to get your feet in the sand and touch the water, because it's going to fire you up more than any other person, because it's your time. So Capricorns, this is 6 months off their time. They're 6 months away from their solar return. So in their chart, it depends on where Cancer is. Wherever a Capricorn person would have Cancer in their chart, that's where they would be getting a shot of energy. So get out and strive a little bit like Capricorn 2. So Capricorn 2 is more earthy, less emotional, and striving. So sometimes it would be good for Cancers to get out of their comfort zone with their moods and just strive like a Capricorn would. And also reduce, the arrow goes down, reduce your need for approval. So a Capricorn 2, for example, person wants to be noticed, but they may not care as much about approval. Hey, you like me? Fine. If you don't, oh well. You can move along. Cancer might be more, Capricorn might be more matter of fact about it. So incorporating the second of Capricorn is to just strive and get out. And your moods can undermine stability. So I think I mentioned last week that there's some websites, sites that where astrologers have compiled all the FBI crime information from the last 40 or 50 years. And it's not 100% accurate, because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't get reported, or it gets under or over reported. But what's interesting is I know in some polls, they've shown the presence of Cancer being involved in crimes. Now, I don't think that's an instant, one-on-one Cancer and crime. But what I do think, and what I think intuitively, is if I'm reading for a Cancer person, even when I'm around people that have major Cancer, I can feel them metaphorically. I can feel them retreat. And it's not me, it's not body language or micro expressions or anything. It's not anything physical or even anything they say, do, or something with their voice or sniff, or it's something in their aura. They'll be listening, but they will retreat, and then you can't get to them. So they're very hard to reach. So again, that's why I say moods can undermine stability, and that can be a connection to crime. That's what I think. I think astrologers can make that connection, because Cancer feeds off, more than any other sign, they feed off their emotions. If their emotions are dark and unstable, and there's a mood disorder there or something, then you have a strong recipe. Unless they're around really supportive, loving, gentle people, there's a recipe there for some trouble. And if Cancer's hurt or slighted, that lashing out, this kind of with equal force. Cancer can do that because Cancer is a cardinal sign, and cardinal signs are push. They're push. They're prana. It's direct force. Even if it's indirect, there's still force there. So Cancer people, this is a good time of year to really get in touch with your feelings and think about the last 6 months, because it's a culmination. Think of the last 6 months when we had the Cancer full moon in the winter. So in the winter, the Cancers had their full moon, and it was the Capricorn sun. So a Cancer person should think back, what was happening with me 6 months from now? What were my feelings like? What was my stomach or digestion like? All this stuff's connected. So that would help. That could help Cancer people greatly in being healthy, and just looking forward to the next 6 months as we progress through the year, eventually coming to Capricorn in the winter, and then we'll come to that Cancer full moon, and we just had that Capricorn full moon. So think about that. Just want to remind everybody that I said this at the beginning, please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. 80% of viewers are not subscribed. I was watching another astrologer. I think she has about 50,000 subscribers, doing really well. But she said in the last month, her videos, she said she had 70% of her viewers were not subscribed. So isn't that interesting that she was growing at a great rate? She has 50,000 subscribers, but 70% of those 50,000 weren't even watching her new videos. So it just goes to show you that you always have new people and new viewers from video to video, week to week, live stream to live stream. So please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Tell your friends. And last week we had a pretty good group going. I think last live stream there was the most people that came in and out, maybe like in a 10-minute period. So that was nice. And I'd like to see some more comments so we can engage and get more interactive, maybe even between you guys and gals as well, and get maybe a chart going or something. That would be really, really helpful. So please subscribe. That's my push. So let's get to the celebrities. And again, these are celebrities born just with the upcoming week. They're not born throughout the entire period of Cancer. It would be celebrities between the 3rd and 10th, and maybe the 11th or so. And again, the reason a lot of astrologers will be off 1 or 2 or 3 days, I've had other astrologers tell me, no, you're off 2 days, or no, Jeff, you're off a day. And then I look at their thing and I think, well, they're off a day. So are they right? Am I right? Or are we both right? Well, we're probably both somewhat right, because it depends on, again, you have to get down to, if you want to get down to the nitty gritty, look at your chart and get that exact degree. You really need to have your birthplace, so you have the time zone right, and your birth time. Without having the exact birth time, you don't have the ascendant, you don't have the correct houses, and then you want to have that exact Cancer planet degree, whether it's 29, if it was 29 Cancer, if it was 1 Cancer, 15, that makes a huge difference. And when I look at the celebrities, I know that they're in this period, so they're in the middle. They're in the middle, so to speak, under 20 degrees of Cancer, which is the Pluto time. But I also can figure out from that if a Cancer celebrity is 10 degrees of Cancer when he or she was born, approximately around 20 years old, their chart started to shift, and they would have expressed more Leo qualities, which is the next sign, and they would have moved forward at that time. So for some people it's earlier, for some people it's later. So that's an interesting thing as well. So the Cancer celebs this week, I found quite a few. This was a little easier than last week, and I picked the celebrities that I thought were had a combination of sensitivity, a little bit of flamboyant and audacious, witty, or sometimes hilarious, or just kooky and maybe loony. And when we go through these, think about some of these people and what they've done or movies they've been in. You can see kind of the strong positives and negatives of Cancer. So Kevin Bacon, he's one of my favorite. He's married to Kira Sedgwick. And, Kevin's famous for Footloose from the mid-'80s when he was in his 20s. And, of course, he acted in that. And I think he did a little singing, but mostly he did all that cool dancing, Western dancing and stuff. So Kevin Bacon, he's also done horror and he's done comedy. And I think he doesn't get enough work, or he doesn't take enough work, but he can certainly do both light and dark stuff equally. And he was really good in a movie called Stir of Echoes, which was kind of a low budget horror movie from 10 or 15 years ago. He was really, really good in that. So Kevin Bacon, to me, he's got that smile, he's got that jaw. And he's also a musician. He tours with his brother, the Bacon brothers. So he's a touring band as well. So he's got the music and the acting. So that's where he puts that Pluto energy into, I think, is the music. So Tom Cruise, what to say about Tom Cruise? I think he's a kook. I always have. I think, yes, he does have talent. He has his own unique, there's no one else like Tom Cruise. And I think people are like, love him, maybe hate him. He's kind of crazy to me. He's just crazy. But he has a charisma, I guess, and an energy about him. He was one of the biggest box office stars at some point in the 80s or 90s there. He was bigger than Denzel and Tom Hanks and Harrison Ford and Mel Gibson. And, he was like number one. So he's got something going on there to connect with the public. But he's someone also that has that Pluto sub-ruler. He's very, very intense, especially about his ideologies, which turns a lot of people off. So the next one, another trigger, O.J. Simpson. Whoa. I told you this list was really going to show the positive and negatives of Cancer. I don't lie. So O.J. Simpson, well, regardless of the whole murder thing and the acquittal and all that, I won't go into that. But just in his life, he had a tough life, tough childhood, and he was also very obsessed and attached, I think, to a grandmother or a grandfather. There was some grandparent or aunt or something that he was like really, really obsessively attached to. So apparently he didn't get enough parenting from his regular parents, and he was obsessed with that. And he had some physical problems too, but he eventually became a football player and overcame all that because he has that grit and intensity. And he, of course, ran into all sorts of trouble and obviously had some sort of unstable mentality or disorder. I don't know. I would like to see a psychologist or psychiatrist podcast on him and what he or she thinks, of his life in general and everything. But yeah, he definitely fits some of the darker parts of Cancer. Geraldo Rivera is another extremely controversial, kooky, loony guy. Geraldo, he's got a lot of chutzpah, right? He's got chutzpah. He's got, I don't know how to explain Geraldo. I used to see him live with my mother. We used to go see him live in New York City when he was taping his show. And that was fun. That was intense. But he's an intense guy. So this is what I'm saying about Cancer. Like, you cannot underestimate Cancer people. And I know we're all males here so far, but Cancers have a quiet power. You think of power, you think of Scorpio, but you don't see a lot of people equating the word power with Cancer. But they can be so vulnerable and so powerful at the same time. So Geraldo, definitely controversial guy. Sylvester Stallone, probably, I would say, exhibits more of the positive Cancerian qualities for a well-known person born in this decade. Of course, he did the emotional Pluto-inspired. Rocky is a Pluto character, absolutely, or maybe a Jupiter god, maybe god like Jupiter, Zeus. I mean, he's a vulnerable, he's a giant, but underneath he's vulnerable. His underbelly is vulnerable and scared and full of fear, even though he's larger than life and hard on the outside and has all these muscles and this grit and toughness. And but Rocky is sensitive and aggressive and violent. Rambo is sensitive and aggressive and violent. It's the same thing. It's the Cancer. Do these Cancer people consciously or do they subconsciously pick this work? Because casting agents in Hollywood and producers in music I think they have access to the magic answers and the secret, because the way they place these people in their work, and of course they're attracted to it and attracted to some of this darkness, but it's also emotional. It's also about people and the human condition is amazing to me. So yes, Sylvester Stallone, I could watch his movies. He did a lot of bad movies too, but his primary movies, the franchises, are wonderful. Finally, we get to a woman, Janet Leigh from Psycho, Jamie Lee Curtis's mother and the wife of Tony Curtis. I think that's correct. And what a life that must have been, right? Being married to Tony Curtis in that time in Hollywood as a woman. Oh my gosh. But she was a little thing, a little petite, but amazing. I mean, look at those eyes and that smile and that moony face that she did in Psycho and other movies. Just beautiful and sensitive and so innocent, like a child. Like she has no power to her, but she does, and she did. And then even years later, doing bit parts, she was in, from 1998, there was a Halloween sequel movie called Halloween H2O. Now, of course, the Halloween movies, the lead is Jamie Lee Curtis, which is her daughter. I love Jamie Lee as well, and we'll get to her when we get to Scorpio and Sag. But Jamie Lee, in her character in the movie, there's a scene where Janet Leigh's character, it's not her mom, Janet Leigh plays her secretary because she's the dean, the female dean of a prep school. So Janet Leigh says, "If I may be maternal for a moment," she talks to her about her health or how she's looking and that she seems stressed. So that ring, it's so cute. She says, "If I may be maternal for a moment." Of course, she's doing a real life scene with her, a scene with a real life daughter. So that's just awesome. But Janet Leigh, really cool. Huey Lewis from Huey Lewis and the News had all those pop hits. Of course, his music was showcased in the Back to the Future movies. He probably made most of his money from that. And Huey has that lantern jaw. And he's still going, has a lot of tenacity. I don't know much about his personal life, but he seems to be on the more positive side of connecting with the fans and cancer. Ringo Starr from the Beatles and his own music, Ringo Starr and his super band of stars. He's a kooky guy, incredibly talented, obviously coming from the Beatles, and probably overlooked as a songwriter, and very interesting. Andy Fletcher, I mentioned him. He is the late keyboardist from the British group Depeche Mode, and Depeche Mode's 80s and 90s music is all mood. It's all dark, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful and sensitive and poignant and gentle. And he did all that keyboard work and all the synthesizer and piano flourishes. So if you listen to Depeche Mode, you'll hear there's so much Cancer influence, I think, in that music. And it's dark. It's obviously dark. Mark Almond is another dark singer, oriented from the new wave pop new wave music from the late 70s and 80s and 90s. And he's from the group Soft Cell, Tainted Love. I know I mentioned that in a video previously, that Tainted Love, to me, that seems like a Cancer song, right? And next we have Jib Kerr from Simple Minds. And Simple Minds are from Scotland. Simple Minds is the equivalent of U2. So U2's from Ireland, and they're one of the biggest bands in the world of all time. But Jim Kerr from Simple Minds is an equally good band, if not better, from Scotland. But they didn't get the notoriety here in the States because U2 took the crown. But in Europe and in other countries like Brazil, South America, the Philippines, all those kind of countries, Simple Minds has millions and millions of fans, probably more than U2. So they're the Scottish version of U2. And Jim Kerr, the music is so inspiring and emotional. It's wonderful. Definitely one of the more positive cancers on this decan. Ronnie James Dio, he was a heavy metal singer. He was with Black Sabbath and also many other bands. He's passed now, but I bring him up because he was a small, slight guy, but he had this dark Gothic look. He had long hair. He was he probably didn't weigh more than 125 pounds. But the way he could sing heavy metal songs, unbelievable. Also, he could sing ballads so beautiful, like a heavy metal ballad. So you got all these tough guys and then singing a ballad. So therein lies the beauty and contradiction of Cancer. When those emotions are stirred in a Cancer person, that's what motivates them. It can motivate them to do crime. It can motivate them to hurt people and to be passive aggressive, or it can motivate them to be so creative and connect with others in a way that no other sign can. Cancers are canny. Cancers are shrewd. Cancers can almost, it's like when I think of reading someone else's mind, I think of like Aquarius or Pisces, definitely Pisces. But with Cancer, it's not so much that they're reading your mind, but they're reading your emotions. So if a Cancer person's very tuned in, they can read your emotions, your emotional language very well. And if they're a positive person, they can do a lot of healing and caring, and they can make great doctors, nurses, anything like that, or they can heal through their acting or their music. So, one of the other Cancer actors I want to think about is Tom Hanks. He did a movie about 10 years ago called Captain Phillips, where he played that real life captain of that boating accident. And at the end, he's wounded and he's so burnt out from fighting with the pirates. He starts to he's trying not to cry and he's trying to be tough, but then he starts to cry and he's doing it at the same time. And it's so Cancer. It's like, I think they just let him do it naturally. I don't think they even scripted it. And that's Cancer. Next is Bella Fleck, the big musician. And definitely very, very kind of folky and homey and Cancer. Peter Murphy is another dark goth vocalist and musician from the 70s and 80s. And he's from a group called Bauhaus, which was pivotal in the whole dark gothic new wave sound that came out of Britain, Scotland, Ireland, and even parts of the United States. So he was very much instrumental in that. And again, very, very sweet, loving songs, but also dark. Justin Willman he's a comedian and he does stand-up and he's on Netflix and he does Magic for Humans. And I watch that with my family. It's great. And he does card tricks and he's definitely zany and he shows that ability to tune into people. I think he's a good psychological comedian because he understands, he reads the room well, and he's really looking at people's eyes when he's doing the tricks. So not only the sleight of hand, I think he's doing, and I think he's a mentalist as well. That's what I get, but he's really good. Beck is a pop alternative singer and musician from the last 30 years. Got big in the 90s, and his music is kind of watery and obscure. He's a very overlooked songwriter, though. I don't love all his music, but he's almost like Prince in a way. Beck is very prolific and writes an incredible amount of music. He's well known, but he's not that well known. He's not like a Dave Matthews Band well known. Or some of those country guys, like Garth Brooks or Toby Keith was, but he's very, very talented and very, very moony with the face. Tesla in history, he battled a lot in his personal life with being sensitive, but he was also very shrewd and came up with a lot of different theories for things. And obviously, there's the cars now that Elon Musk owns Tesla, so there's a lot of influence there. And so that was the last celeb I had. I had some others, but I ran out of room. And my daughter was not with me today, so she didn't have time to draw a turtle. So how did I do? This is my, Karen says, today was my late father's birthday. So interesting. Karen, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you got to hear this. I hope that something resonates, hopefully positive, but that is really, really interesting that you had a Cancer parent. I had a Cancer grandmother, actually two. Both my grandmothers were moonchilds. Yep, both moonchilds. So yeah, the Cancers are very, 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 very unique. Carolyn says, excellent drawing of a turtle. Can you comment? Yes, Carolyn, you're reading my mind. Of course, you know what I was coming to. This is my drawing. I drew it and I did it kind of quick, but I drew this turtle and colored it in because it's the constellation symbol for Cancer. So in the constellation of Gemini and going into the dog, which is Sirius, and it is a Sirius star. It's extremely bright and intense. There's the turtles. So Cancer people can have an affinity for crabs, but they could also have an affinity for turtles. So that's why I drew the turtle. And Carolyn also mentioned in a comment that turtles can retreat, right? They can retreat just like a crab. And then this armor is like impenetrable. So that underbelly of the turtle, nothing is going to hurt the turtle. And the turtle's like, well, you're not going to see me maybe for another 10 years. I'm not coming out. So the turtle can hang in there, right? So that's a good symbology of the grit and tenacity of Cancer. And Karen says, yes, and he was very creative and musical. Awesome. That's awesome. Karen, what your late father's moon was in, because especially for a musician, that would be interesting to see, definitely. But yeah, like I said, I haven't known a lot of Cancers personally or worked with a lot of Cancers. This is one of those other weeks where I'm going off mostly things that I've heard from other people, things I've observed with some of these actors and actresses and musicians. I've read about their lives and things, but I do not know many people born during this period. And when we were mentioning some of these celebrities, obviously most of these are men that I picked. I didn't do that on purpose. I just happened to, when I filtered by musicians and actors and actresses, there were more born this week. Maybe there's not a lot of women born this week that are famous. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But it's interesting that they're almost all men. And I know there are a lot of Cancer females that are born in the other decanates. But the Pluto influence, so Cancer and Pisces are the two water signs that would have a Pluto decanate, right? And obviously Scorpio, early Scorpios that are born the very first part of Scorpio, they would have a Pluto decanate. So I think the Pluto decanate is really, really interesting. And I would also wager that people born this week would have an interest or a sideline business or a hobby that a lot of people don't know about. And it might be not necessarily because they're secretive. It just might be it's so precious to them that they don't want to just let anybody see it, so to speak. So there's a strong need for attention to be needed emotionally here, but that doesn't mean there's a need to be the center of attention. So that therein lies more of the contradictions too of Cancer. It's like, well, I want you to need me. I need attention. Pay attention to me. Hello. But Cancer's also like, whoa, wait a minute. Don't pay too much attention to me. I'm going to go back on my shell now. I'm going to go in my cave. and I'm going to recharge. And because Cancer, if you think about Cancer having the turtle symbol and also the crab, if Cancer is a sign that goes inside and hides behind their armor and their defenses, probably more so than any other sign, and acts and starts life with a stance of defense, then if you're defensive, if you're on the defense, it's kind of automatic that you're going to feel slighted more from people or betrayed or hurt because you're already starting off in a negative way. So it's important, and we all get defensive, but it's important for Cancer people or Cancer rising people especially. I'm seeing that time and time again in Cancer rising people being very, very defensive and almost kind of like overly defensive for that it doesn't fit the situation. So I'm not sure why that is. And again, you would look to the moon for a lot of bingos there, what their moon sign's saying, especially for the rising person, because the moon is ruling ruling the chart. But having that shell, Cancer has all those feelings underneath, but can't always show it or doesn't want to show it. So it's like the Cancer person from a distance can actually seem unfeeling or smug. Does that make sense? How a Cancer can be smug and unfeeling. And some of the male actors, I see them. I see Geraldo Rivera as smug. I liked him back in the day, but I think he's very smug. Now, I don't know what he's like in real life. So again, Sylvester Stallone with Rambo, very defensive stance. O.J. Simpson was he was a football player, defense. So when you think of that, you can't make this stuff up. Like this is, I always love astrologers that love astrology and are passionate about it. We always love the skeptics because there is room for skepticism. I'm totally cool with that. But the funny thing is, skeptics will say this doesn't work. That's BS. You're just making it up or whatever. Okay. But if we were making it up, if you're making things up, and yes, some things sometimes are a stretch based on our own biases and filters. If you listen to me and then you listen to another astrologer in 5 minutes, he or she they might talk about something similar that I say about Cancer, but they might also have a different angle. And you may think, oh, that guy Jeff, he was right on. This lady kind of said it a little different, but she's also right on. So, the skeptics are saying, well, it doesn't work. If it didn't work, you wouldn't have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people and fans following astrology and getting value out of it. You wouldn't. Most sane, smart, educated people would be like, forget this. There's no value in it. It's not fun. It's not interesting. If you're someone that likes to know what makes people tick, astrology is just one tool. If you have a psychology background, that's another tool. If you have a sociology background, that's another tool. If you have a marketing background, you probably studied the psychology of, tactics of business and marketing. That's another angle of how people tick and that, like how to sell things to people and, what people get excited about and that building rapport, like car salesmen building rapport with people so they can trick you in on the dealer lot into buying. You go to buy the $20,000 car and now all of a sudden you're buying a $40,000 car because the person said you're worth it or played into you, things like that. So all those things are interesting. And that's where astrology comes in as a very, very, very good tool. And Cancer people, especially born this week, are very shrewd and very savvy. That's why I say don't underestimate Cancer, because think about, everyone knows someone in their family or friends that was a super quiet, shy Cancer person, but look at what they achieved. It's rare that they didn't achieve anything. And I don't mean just like getting a fancy title in your career or business. I don't mean that. I don't mean just achieving outward, in an external way. They could have achieved, in a very inner way. They could have written books. They could have, they could have been a novel writer. They could have been a musician. They could have been an artist, or they could have been very, very prominent in their community with clubs or animals or the homeless or anything with disadvantaged people. So think about that when you think of Cancer, because you'll find it. A family or friend member that was born this week, you'll find a way that they were intensely caring towards something, but also a little zany and maybe went a little too far with it, kind of thing. And I would like to listen to more music from people born this week, because I would like to hear, I want to see if I can hear the Pluto influence and not just the moon, because the moon is sensitive, but Pluto is sensitive, but Pluto is tougher, and Pluto is heavier and Pluto's a little more able to, has a thicker skin and able to take some more hits, so to speak, before they feel slighted than Cancer. But before we go, I'm going to take a quick look at the cosmic weather for tonight. So tonight we have the sun at 7 of Cancer for June 28th, 2024. As I mentioned last week, we still have Venus in Cancer, and we have Mercury in Cancer. So it's almost a stellium, which is a grouping of 3 or more planets grouped very close together. So it's not quite a stellium, but it is by sign. So again, needless to say, strong Cancer energy right now, very, very little of the opposite Capricorn energy. And then we have the outer planets in Pisces, nothing going on with Scorpio. But there's a lot of strong water energy right now. We have the sun, Venus, Mercury, Neptune, and Saturn, all in water signs. And the astrologer I was watching earlier today, the young woman was talking about the Saturn in Pisces, which is stationary right now. She was talking about the 19-degree Saturn Pisces and some of the aspects that it made, such as sextiling the recent full moon, and that would also, it also sextiles the Taurus planets like Uranus, which is the outer planet. And of course, with later, it's trining Venus, which is really nice because Saturn gives lessons. So anytime Saturn can throw a little trine in there for the cosmic weather, I think that's always a good thing, because, do we all want to learn lessons the hard way every time? So we need a few trines there. But that's really good there. And I think that's, and I also wanted to mention this week you have Pollux and Sirius and Canopus. Those are all Cancer stars in the constellation that are prominent this week. So Pollux is Mars, Canopus can be Saturn and Jupiter, and Sirius can also be Jupiter and Mars. And Sirius, which is the dog, and it also equates to Altarf, which Altarf's another fixed star in the constellation, and that's at the end of the crab's legs. I saw in the illustration there in online. So it's kind of interesting. So maybe the other person I was listening to, the other woman, maybe that's what she was talking about with the Mercury influence, maybe with the Sirius and the dog, because there's some the Gemini constellation's Mercury, which we talked about last couple of weeks. So I don't really see this time as a strong Mercury influence, and I don't see that Gemini prominent anymore right now, because we've moved on. We have the Mercury's in Cancer now. It's not in Gemini. All we have is Jupiter in Gemini. So Gemini is much more subdued now. So all of you Gemini folks, you've had your solar return, and unless you have a planet around 7, 8, 9, or 10, you're not getting any more conjunctions from the previous planet. You'll have to wait. So I'm losing my voice. I got allergy thing going on. I don't know what it is, if it's the air quality or what. But here it is, so we're an hour and 10 minutes. I'm looking to the west, and the sun's going to be setting, I guess, in about another 20 minutes. But look at the energy. For those of you that tuned in last week, I mentioned how it's still busy. Summer is busy, but it's quieter, right? It's so much quieter than it is 2 weeks ago, except for this man that lives in my neighborhood, and he he has a brand new Ford Mustang sports car, V8 engine. And for those of you guys and gals that grew up in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you'll know people that had muscle cars, right? This guy, I don't know how old he is. I can't see. I've never seen. He goes up and down our road at like 60 miles an hour. This is a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I don't know. I might have to go to the zoning and do a complaint. It's terrible. This guy, I mean, he needs a track. So other than that, that's loud. But everything else, even like the birds and the squirrels, I don't know what it is, that things have settled down. There's a groove. Summer is in the full groove now with Cancer. So it's really interesting. So anyways, thank you for tuning in again. I was going to do another little segment, but my voice is pretty much shot. So thank you so much. This was Cancer 2. So coming up from July 3rd to the 10th, we'll do another live stream next week. Again, they're either Fridays or Saturdays here on YouTube at Astroscoop 3801 at 7 p.m. And I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, obviously. And Carolyn says, thanks for a great chat. Thank you, Carolyn. And Karen, as always, you two are my most loyal chatters. I really, really appreciate it. I hope at some point we can get more of a group going. I'd like a dozen. I'd like to get a dozen people, like with just comments going. That would be really, really good. And I think it also has to do with the sign we're in, the period. Right now, people are starting vacations. So I would imagine for most of the summer, the live streams will probably be light. And then if I can get some more subscribers by the fall, I'm looking into September, October to growing the channel. We should probably, hopefully, get some more traction. So that'd be great. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and all that good stuff. And thank you so much. We'll see you next week.